Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to your city council. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And just as a reminder, we all have cell phones. If you'd at least turn them to silent or off, would be greatly appreciated. And I see we have some special guests. The St. Williams Troop, is it 467? 167, thanks. Going by memory doesn't serve me too well. Thanks for joining us this evening. I understand it's one of your merit badges requirements to attend a council meeting or some government agency. Mr. Steve Smooter, you're the Scoutmaster? Yep. Do you want to step forward and say a few words, or you can hang in the background if you want, or you can certainly come up and...
No, you're working on...
You got to step up to the podium so that the audience can hear you. There's a lot of viewers out there in TV land.
So we're here tonight working on Communications Merit Badge. One of the requirements for the guys is to attend a council meeting or a school board meeting and listen to different points of view, take notes about how people are communicating about different points of view on given issues. So we have with us, why don't you guys stand up? Will's our senior patrol leader, Connor's patrol leader, Aaron's our scribe, Griffin's our assistant senior patrol leader, and Chase just joined us like 2 weeks ago, brand new to our troop. In the back row, I got Mr. Kyle and Mr. Nelson, who are assistant scoutmasters.
Well, great. Well, thanks for joining us on such a cold evening.
Yeah.
Should we make the shirt last a long time since there's no school tomorrow, right? Stay for a long time? No? Okay.
So our first item on tonight's agenda is a presentation, and our Scott Hickok will give us the introduce. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I have the honor this evening of introducing you to my new staff member, Daniel Cahill. Let me tell you a little bit about Daniel and his position, and then Dan is here to speak as well. We are very, very pleased. Daniel has filled the position that was vacated by Amy Kempf. He is going to be our neighborhood preservation specialist. Daniel comes to us with a lot of skills and experience. Not only does he have 2 degrees, an associate's degree, and also a bachelor's degree in law enforcement, but he also has experience in code enforcement as well. Born and raised in Minnesota here. He is very enthusiastic about this position. And as you know, we in Fridley pride ourselves on our code enforcement, our neighborhood preservation activities. And it is that thing about Fridley that some can't exactly put their finger on, but they know that there's efforts out there that keep neighborhoods looking good. And they also know that when there's something that they need to call about, that there's an opportunity and a person that can respond to that. And without much further ado, I would like to introduce you to our new neighborhood preservation specialist, Dan Cahill. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Scott. Council members, Mayor, Dan. I'm originally from where I was code enforcement for the city of White Bear Lake, Montemedi. Before that, I was with the city of Minneapolis, and then before that, I was a community service officer with the city of Cottage Grove. So, yeah. Then also, I've been serving in the Army Reserve for the last 12 years. So, yeah. But yeah, thank you. It's an honor to be here. I really appreciate the, coming here, and I really hope to do really good work for you guys here. So,
Is this your first day here?
no, January 8th is my first day.
Great.
So,
Well, good.
yeah.
I'll be emailing you tomorrow. I have one for you.
Oh, good. Good.
That's
Good.
Well, welcome aboard.
All right. Thank you. Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
We'll keep you busy.
All right. Good. Good.
Especially maybe with the new ordinance change related to backyards and that type of thing. So.
Yeah.
Dan, Mr. Mayor, council member Balcom, that's a good point. Dan is familiar with that, and we've had very nice opportunity. Julie Jones has given him a nice orientation of the city and talked through some of those ordinances, and you're going to find that Dan is very, very skilled in interpreting the law and also enforcing the law out in the field. So we think that's going to be very helpful for us, especially on some of those backyard situations that we hadn't been able to get to before. So,
Mr. Mayor, Scott, will you still have an intern, you think, in the summer now with?
yes, our goal is eventually, I think with the strength of Dan and his program, eventually I would like to get us to a point where we take the peaks and valleys out and possibly not even have to have an intern. But as you know, our interns help us get through the entire city on an annual basis. And that really helps us stay ahead of a number of issues that can crop up over time. But I think that as time goes and as we're able to really get back into the systematic code enforcement and map issues and start to really look at it as a researcher statistician as much as just an enforcer out there, we'll be able to maybe curtail some of that. Count on an intern for a few years, but as time goes, we really hope we can kind of take the peaks and valleys out of that demand so that we get down in the tail of the rat. If you remember my diagram years ago, we want to get down to that point where you're not getting calls and people aren't needing to call because we're ahead of the game.
Mr. Mayor, Scott, also, how closely will he be working, will Dan be working with rental ordinance and some of those coalition group, the group that's out there working on?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Balcom, the beauty, I think, of the department and also the new building is that we're not only, as a department, close and understanding what each other does and how we can help facilitate good delivery of services for each other, but we're also physically close in the building downstairs. And if Dan's out in the field, and this has already happened since his start here, where he'll come back in and he'll ask, is there a rental license for this? Are there any special conditions about this that we should know about? And rental and neighborhood preservation work very, very closely together.
Thank you.
Great. Again, welcome, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks for coming out this evening.
Thanks, Dan.
All right.
Okay, our next item on tonight's agenda is the usual proposed consent agenda, and as always, our city manager will give us that overview.
Thank you, Your Honor. The first item on our consent agenda is the City Council meeting minutes for January 7th, 2019. We have a resolution approving gifts, donations, and sponsorships to the City of Fridley, and this is now being done on a monthly basis instead of waiting until December to provide those to you. Resolution requesting the municipal state aid system construction funds for other local uses. This is an annual resolution that we do. We have a motion to approve the city's pay equity compliance report to the state of Minnesota. And we have a temporary on-sale intoxicating liquor license, which will go to the Fridley Lions for the February 22nd at Banquets of Minnesota. And we have claims, and that is our consent agenda.
Thank you. Are there any of these items that the council wishes to remove for further discussion? Are there any persons in the audience that wish to have any of these proposed consent agenda items removed for further discussion? Hearing none and seeing none.
If nothing further, I would move approval of the proposed consent agenda as presented.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion, we have a second. If there's no other discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? The motion carries. Next item is open forum for any visitors in the audience that wish to address the council on an item that is not on tonight's agenda. Hearing none and seeing none, we'll move on. Next item under item 7 is a public hearing. We have a motion to open the public hearing and waive the reading.
So moved.
We have a second?
I second.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Whoa. Can we adopt the agenda first?
Oh, yeah, you're right. I skipped it. Jeez.
Okay.
You can see what a week's vacation will do to me. I
Yeah.
get out of sync altogether.
It's so in order, I move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Second. Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve or adopt tonight's agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed, the motion carries. And now, item number 7, public hearing. Do we have a motion to open
The
and
public
waive the
hearing
reading?
and waive the reading? So
Yes.
moved.
I second that
And we have
also.
another second here. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? The motion carries.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I have a presentation, but unfortunately my computer is not firing up here, so I'll just describe to you what's in our Part 2 Wellhead Protection Plan. So we are doing an update. In 2008, we passed our first Wellhead Protection Plan. We had a joint powers agreement with Anoka County, as a matter of fact, to perform the modeling that was necessary for that in 2004. The Wellhead Protection Plan establishes two things. One is what's called the Drinking Water Supply Management Area, and that's a 10-year time of travel for groundwater to get to our wells pumping at their maximum capacity. So it's a theoretical hydrogeologic analysis. And then the second piece of that is within that boundary to provide some protections for groundwater through land use, education, and so forth. In our current update phase, every 10 years it's mandated that we update this plan, present it to review for Minnesota Department of Health. The plan was the Part 1 plan, which redelineated our wellhead protection area, our DWSMA, Drinking Water Supply Management Area, was completed in August of this year, and we reviewed it at a public meeting with the EQE, and we didn't have any comments come through at that time. So we went on and moved on to Part 2, which is our protection actions. And that's what's included in tonight's agenda item and the plan that is on the website, 537 pages total. A lot of that's appendix and a lot of that's research and background materials. So, but the summary is that the wellhead protection plan includes similar protective actions to what we have in our current plan, which include sealing of abandoned wells, educating the public with regard to the interaction between surface water and groundwater, which we do on a regular basis, land use limitations for infiltration, where industrial infiltration is in close proximity to our wells and our well zones, and then continued research and participation. So one of the activities there is our staff will measure groundwater depths at our wells on a monthly basis, measure the drawdowns as the pumps are on, and then we also will provide sampling for constituents that are indicators as to groundwater age. Typically we don't pay for those, Department of Health does, but we'll participate. So those kinds of activities that are listed in our Wellhead Protection Plan Part 2. And I'm sorry I don't have the presentation for you. I did have it up, it just seemed to have died on me, so I apologize
Technology
for
is
that.
so great when it works, right?
Yeah.
Okay, council, have any questions before I open it up to the public for comment? I do have, so in the past, we've done some of these private wells and given some incentives for people to do that. Can you tell me how successful that has been, and if we're still doing that? And if so, how we're marketing that so that we can, I don't know how many wells we suspect are out there, or maybe we don't even have a handle on it, but for wellhead protection, it would be great to have these private wells that are probably, many people don't even know they still have them on their property.
Mr. Mayor, I'll answer, let's see, so the question about how many there are, we don't know. There are a lot. We know there's a lot, because a lot of the properties in Fridley were served prior to the distribution system, water treatment system being in place. It wasn't a long time, but there was enough time. And so, the other factor to consider there, as far as we don't know, is the wells installed in those days were not required to provide information to the Department of Health that they are today. Today you have to provide a boring log to the Department of Health if it's a drinking water well, and they keep those records. But back in the 50s, 40s, 60s, there weren't those requirements, and so So it's hard for us to tell. As far as the success of our programs in the past, what we've done is we've gone to Department of Health for grants for 50% match, and the homeowners have matched 50%. We've had some, I would say, upward trend in response, but still not as much as we'd like to see. Of the wells that we do have record of, private wells, we've reached out to every one of those property owners in our last cycle to see if they would be interested in sealing their well, and we did get a couple takers in regard to that, but we're seeing numbers like 5 to 7 a year is what we're seeing when we have that program going. And while that's something,
What,
it's
in your estimation, would be a better inducement for people to do it? What's the negative if people don't seal off these old abandoned wells?
it's an expense that they get nothing for, really. You know, on a personal level, I mean, it is, you know,
Other
provide.
than they can be leaking down
Sure.
and contaminating our aquifer.
Correct. But I think on the, if you ask like for the sociological answer, it's that, you know, you get, it's like, you know, rebuilding a bridge. You know, you rebuild the bridge and you have the same bridge that you had before after a lot of expense. To somebody, there isn't like a real benefit to them personally. But one of the things that I do know is that's changing is the disclosure laws are inducing folks to have to deal with these at time of sale. And so we had several actually that came in our last round of grants that that took us up on that because they were selling their property. I'll tell you, we've tried a few other things. Bart Biernot's here with Anoka County Health, and one of the things that they spearheaded, along with their wonderful Know the Flow website, which you can learn all about wellhead protection, all about other water resource and water quality matters in our county. www.knowtheflow, right? .us, yeah. And in addition to that, Bart and his staff spearheaded an effort with Department of Health to actually do a video on well sealing, because a lot of people wondered, you know, we would talk with them and they'd say, well, what does that really entail? How messy is it? How long does it take? You know, when can they do it? How expensive is it? That kind of thing. So they actually did a video that's available on the MDH. It's on YouTube. If you search for MDH well sealing, you'll find it. And, you know, so that we've tried to bring people to kind of an understanding of it, and yet we get kind of a modest response, I would say, you know.
So, yeah, and I was gonna bring that up when you said the disclosure. That's been in a standard real estate contract for a number of years, that the seller has to disclose that in a disclosure. Is there any teeth to that disclosure? So they disclose it, and then if the buyer's still willing to buy, there's no enforcement there, I take it.
There seems to be more of an awareness on the inspector's part to find these wells. For those that are unfamiliar, a lot of them are, you know, in residential cases are underneath stairs. If you have a crawl space underneath your stairway, it's a good probability that you had or have a well. And so, you know, I think one of the things that inspectors are getting better at for homeowners, for buyers out there, are finding these wells, and then it comes to a decision-making point where, you know, they don't want to, you know, buy into the liability, and so one party or the other will fund the sealing.
It seems like with the 50% off as an inducement to do it, understanding that there's really no benefit for the property owner to tap the well,
Right.
other than it's the right thing to do. So it seems to me that there should be something with some teeth in it with this disclosure, not necessarily on a city level, probably should be addressed at a state level or something, so. But I think that's where you're gonna see better reaction or enforcement with the inducement of getting it 50% paid for up to a certain amount, and with the idea if you're selling your property, you better disclose it or you could be held liable. If they say no, that we don't have a well, and yet they do, and, you know, of course, I suppose there's a little bit of that, well, we never knew, so. It's probably a tough one, but it's been my impression that even with the inducement of a 50% match, that it's been small amounts, especially when you say we have a lot.
Mr. Mayor, we have had folks that are outside our drinking water supply management area as well that have wanted to seal their well under our program, but, you know, they aren't, it's not eligible. It's not an eligible activity unless it's within that boundary.
I see.
And so with the boundary change, it's adjusting a little bit due to better modeling and better groundwater geology analysis. You know, there may be some new territory that's out there. It's not expanding greatly, but, you know, on the margins a little bit, and it may, you know, make some folks eligible that weren't prior to today.
Well, and some of it's education, and I suppose it's gotta be repetitive, either in our newsletters or whatever, on our water bills, whatever, to keep putting that reminder in people's minds. I mean, something should be done, because we know it's aiding in contamination. So, okay, that's my thoughts. Anybody else? This is a public hearing. Anybody in the audience wish to make comment about this wellhead protection? It's not one of those really hot topics until it is.
So in order, I move to close the public hearing?
I'll second that.
We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? The motion carries.
And then do we need a separate motion to submit the city of Fridley's draft wellhead protection plan update?
Yeah, it looks like a
to the
next
On
item,
page
huh?
66, I think.
I was just gonna.
Yeah, the next item. Under new business, item number 8 is the action item, it looks like to me.
So in order, I move to approve the submittal of the proposed City of Fridley wellhead protection plan update to the Minnesota Department of Health.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion also carries.
Mr. Mayor, if you'd indulge me, I would like to just make sure that we let folks know that we will be putting that out, that presentation, when I get it back. We'll put it up on the website so folks can look at it, all right?
Still
Jim,
a
when
few
do you
bugs to work out on the computer program,
Yeah,
huh?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Kozlucha, when do you expect that to happen? What's the date approximately?
As far as getting that
Just
up
in
on the
case they
website.
want to keep looking in the website, looking for it. to be
Tomorrow
on.
by noon, it'll be up there.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
thank you.
Number 9, under new business, receive the bids and award the spring Stony Brook Outfall Stabilization Project.
Mr. Mayor, I got this one to work, so a little better shape here. So we completed the trunk storm sewer improvement project down Craigbrook Way in 2018. And if you remember, this project was to alleviate flooding upstream in the industrial area upstream of Easter Road. In September 20th, we had a 4-inch rain in about 6 hours, and we had some issues with the prior, I guess, the older gabions and the performance of the outfall itself. So we did an emergency repair to mitigate, you know, erosion along that area, and this is looking actually overhead from the river. So the pipe on the left is the new outfall from Craigbrook, and then on the right, you will see 2 54-inch corrugated pipes. Those are the older pipes across Alden Way. And so we looked at permanent solution, some project options, and alternative number 1 was modify the existing outlets to drain into one vault structure with one exiting outlet. And we'd fill and cover the vault and tie into the embankments. Alternative number 2 was to modify the outlets to drain into 2 new storm structures with 2 outlets. And then alternative number 3 included installing sheet piling along the south bank of the channel for structural support. And here's, I guess, a rendering of alternative number 2, which includes the 2 structures and the sheet piling on the south bank. Similar angle to what the prior one was. It wasn't quite the same, So the project elements include installing 2 storm manholes and outlet pipes and approximately 950 cubic yards of fill, salvaging and installing a riprap, salvaging and installing an energy dissipator, and restoration and erosion control, along with that sheet piling. Staff has met with the property owners on both sides of the channel. We've discussed different alternatives proposed. We did hear that there was a desire to keep the channel open rather than pipe the entire channel. We answered questions and looked into concerns that were brought forward by the property owners that are adjacent, and we'll continue to work with them as the project moves forward. In December, we obtained quotes after discussion with contractors about the different alternatives. We were expecting that we would be able to quote the project, but they came in higher than the 175,000 bid threshold, and so we went immediately to bid with the project, and we allocated the $200,000 in our stormwater fund for this project in the capital investment plan. And excess funds due to the higher than expected cost for the project would be allocated from the 2019 CIP TMDL water quality improvement project slated for this year, and we would allocate $150,000 to this project from that project, which $200,000 is budgeted for. That project's been delayed until after our MS4 permit has been reissued.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I have one question for you, Jim.
Yep.
On that, the bid piece there, I was just curious. There's one listed in here that's just like way out of range. Is that typical for that to be like over $200,000 more than the other one?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Tilbury, yeah, it sometimes happens.
Is it that they just don't want to do the project? Is that?
Sometimes they're at a,
They might not
you know,
have the
geographic, I
resources.
like to think they're at a geographical disadvantage or something of that nature where it just makes them less competitive locally here, so. It could be for a myriad of reasons, though. On the 10th of January, we had 7 sealed bids were opened, and they provided dollar amounts for 3 alternatives. Lemedy and Sons of Hugo were the low responsive bidder with their bid of $329,400, which included alternative 2 and 3. And Lemedy and Sons has worked with the city in the past. Most recently, they worked on the Main Street Drainage Improvement Project in the fall of 2017. And so staff is requesting the council move to receive the bids and for the tabulation on page 69 and award the project to Lemedy and Sons for $329,400. And we would reallocate the capital investment plan for the budget as we indicated. Thanks.
Okay, are you suggesting, Mr. Kozlucher, that your recommendation is Lemedy and Sons, you said, and that's for the, with alternatives, with which alternatives?
2 and 3.
2 and 3, okay. Okay. It is quite a bit higher than the 175 you kind of estimated, all of them.
Mr. Mayor, it was, we did add some some permanent project elements that we thought that we didn't have in the initial quotes
I see.
for 175. So the second structure, for instance, that covers the 54-inch pipes, that wasn't in there. We didn't have repair to that existing pipe set in the original quotes. So.
Okay. Other questions from council?
I got a bunch.
Okay.
Okay. If you could put up the proposed one, please.
Yep.
And then, Chris, you can pipe in once. So I met with 2 of the adjacent homeowners yesterday. So several concerns. One is go back to the original one there. Okay. So during that time, some of that, just want to make sure this is all included in the project. So Jim and you and I talked briefly before this meeting too. So some of that area with that, first of all, that pipe was turned a little bit, is that correct? The big one was turned, which then, because originally it was shooting water way on the other side. And then it got turned, and so then it caused some of that collapsing along those, whatever you want to call those, are those gabions?
Yes.
Okay, so that's one of the issues there, and then maybe to the new one.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just gonna jump around a little bit. So, and I think part of it was that there will, some of this will be filled, there's a fill-in above there, and there'll be some plantings and stuff that go up there. They'll be smaller, they'll not be big trees, but there'll be things that will grow up relatively quick, or so there is some screening from the street. And then, because you're shaking your head up and down,
Yes,
so that's
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
Councilmember
Okay.
Wilkham, yes.
And then there'll also be some fill there. Maybe, is there a way to point out where that will be? You don't have that capability.
Let's see, I might be able to.
So there'll be some fill over where those pipes, so that those are enclosed, but,
Yeah, it'd be like in this, it'd be in this general area.
okay.
The kind of area.
So then there'll still be a section where there is water still hurt, because obviously this
And
has
that's further
changed
down.
drastically from before this project started last year. So there'll still be some open water area there, and then there's some proposal to put, what is it that you would put there so it would still, at times?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Welcome, you were talking about the riprap and
Yep.
kind of making the, keeping the sound or trying to keep the sound as similar as we could. And I know one of the property owners requested that they like to hear the creek. And so, yeah, we would put some riprap or a combination of the riprap and gabions there that the water can kind of cascade over. So right now that sound is kind of created by the 54-inch pipes, the two older pipes that were there, and there was a little bit of a drop, we call it, where the water would come out, and during low river periods it would be able to drop and make some noise.
Okay, and then, so then their property owner does have one big oak tree that's, that they're concerned about with, some of this fill and building, sort of reinforcing, is that the right word? We do feel that one big tree, we've taken photos, we feel that big tree will survive, or we're expecting it to survive.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Welcome, we expect it will.
Okay. And then there'll be some fencing also way up on top, correct? So a little black kind of fence that's all part of the project, so, because there's always a concern, whenever you build something new, people love to come look, and they love to crawl down in there, and they love to, which is a hazard, and actually heard that someone came through the big pipes, walked through that pipes from the, that are there now. Okay, and then if you, further down, I don't know if you have a picture of, further down yeah. So there was, I don't know how close anyone can see it, but some of those, part of that gabion fell loose there, so that's all gonna be replaced along there. And then including those pieces will be picked up and moved back, and this will be reinforced. Because part of the concern was also is, if you don't do that and some of that stays there, that it can, on either side, cause more washout along there. So how will we prevent, or how will we try to control some of that water that's above ground now with, we're gonna be moving some of the, I think that was a concern on both properties, is there could be more erosion along there. Do we anticipate that, or?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Welcome, we're gonna basically drop all the water to the bottom of those two structures. And so that should eliminate, the energy or the force of the water. Now, during a high flow period, you may get some water that shoots out of there a little bit, but it's gonna be directed down the kind of the center of the channel versus, these are both a little bit misaligned, to be on center of the channel.
But do we think during that big rainfall and since then, we've lost some property on either side there that you could sort of shore up better? And I guess, you can, to me, when we did Glen Creek, there was huge big boulders. Are we seeing, would we anticipate some big we're not talking about little boulders in here, are we talking significant size ones, or?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Volcom, I don't have a dimension on those, but yeah, they'll be substantial enough to handle the flow that we're expecting down the channel. in
So it
the
isn't
design
something
event.
similar to some of that smaller stuff that's in there?
Right.
Okay.
Anything else?
I'm sure there's more things that you have there, Chris. So.
Council people. My name is Chris Schmidt, and I live on up the hill from the project. And first, I would like to thank Jim and Brandon and Ann have been very good about working with myself and the neighbor across the creek, trying to get this situated, because it's a lot of water. And I've lived there for almost 20 years, and in the last 10 for sure, 5 even more so. There's just a lot more water coming through there even before your drainage project because of building up the creek and more lots, parking lots, and less drainage, and so a lot of water's been coming down the pipe. And I guess the only thing, I just want to make sure that the project, and like I said, Jim and Brandon have both been very good about keeping us pretty much in the loop about what's going on, is just to make sure that the property value, it is a residential area, and the renderings look pretty good, but just so that it doesn't look like a drainage ditch and it still looks like a residential area, because of course my property value kind of depends on that the project looks good when it's done. And so I've talked to Jim and Brandon about several of the issues about the erosion, just to make sure with all that water coming down, it doesn't eddy around and wash out the property on the other side where it meets the river, so that my house is quite close to the edge of the hill, and I don't want to have it slide down into the creek or the river. So again, though, I thank you for keeping us in the loop, and I look forward to working with you as the project goes on. Thank you.
Chris, do you think, with some of my comments, do you think we've addressed most of your concerns? We just want to make sure we get them all on the record so that and I know the other one you mentioned, which you just mentioned now, is around the corner where it's also where it can scour around, which is on the river side there. So, and I know that you had talked maybe about doing some talking maybe to the contractor to see if that was something else that could be done. And Jim and I briefly talked about that he said, because I said, what about the DNR doing? And Jim, right, you thought that the DNR is pretty good about if we're trying to do something that's shoring up and preventing erosion into the river is something that they embrace. Maybe not embrace, might not be the right word, but.
Yeah, that they accept.
Yes.
Okay. And the only other issue is, and you kind of mentioned it, that with the trees gone, it's kind of created a attractive nuisance, so to speak, where I guess because we're the property owners, I don't know how it works, but because of the easement, I'm not sure. I think I asked Jim about a hold harmless agreement for me if somebody gets hurt on the pipes, because you just can't account for people's, stupidity. And because these pipes, like the one big pipe's going to be 84-inch pipe, and the other one is a 6-foot pipe, so they're big pipes. So if they crawl down there and jump into the creek and get hurt.
I don't see how in any case it would be your responsibility unless it was your kids or somebody you knew and allowed it, but I wouldn't think you would ever allow it. So it is in our easement, so I can't see where you'd be held liable. I really don't.
Okay, well, I hope that's true. Okay, well, again.
Mr. Mayor, I think one of the big things too is if you see an activity, call 911. That's what they're there for. I mean, if I was a kid, I might want to go screw around there. I mean, because it's.
Well, I don't doubt that for a moment.
Right,
but
guys?
I don't.
Right? I mean, it looks like it could be fun, even though Boy Scouts would never do this, but other young men might, or girls, so.
Right. Okay, great. So, thank you very much, and I look forward to the project being finished. Thank you.
So Jim, along those lines, when do we anticipate this might start in the longevity of the project?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Volcom will be substantially complete, hopefully, now that we're getting some cold weather in April of this year. So we will be working with the contractor to get going as quickly as possible. I am assuming that they'll be ordering structures. We'll be getting shop drawings and ordering structures tomorrow.
Because they can start doing some of this work, you know, okay.
Right, and actually, it's the best time of year to do this work, is right now. So,
Yeah, before the flowages get real great.
we were worried that we weren't gonna get cold enough weather for them to work down there,
You
to
won.
be honest, but now it looks
Oh,
like
so we can blame
we'll be
Jim
there.
on this 20, 30 degree. It's gonna happen, I think.
So Jim, just as being reminded of the Stony Brook project, you know, and it seemed to me some of the difficulty was there wasn't really any lay down yard for equipment and materials. This is a little bit smaller scope, but it's still going to have some big equipment. Do we have any provisions or any areas that doesn't impact the neighborhood so greatly? I mean, that was a very tight project, so I don't know if there's any thoughts about equipment and materials and where to stack it and store it.
Mr. Mayor, excellent question. It may be that we block off Alden Way in front of this project. So, we haven't worked with the contractor on a yard at this point, but we've got a couple other options that are a little ways away from the site, but should be suitable as well, if they need it.
Okay, well, I guess that's an inconvenience, but I guess they can go either way on Alden. That might have to be
Mr. Mayor,
deal.
just to tag on to yours, so would that allow us to do the project a little bit quicker if they didn't have to keep moving their equipment, if you actually could block off that section there?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Volcom, yes.
It's a no-brainer then, right? It's not gonna impact anyone, because they're, like you said, they're gonna be able to get out on either side. It might be a little, you might not be able to go up Alden Way if you're used to doing that, but you have another exit out,
Right.
so. Okay, awesome.
Okay. Any other comments? If none, a motion would be in order.
Okay. If it's so in order, move to receive the bids and award the Stony Brook Outfall Stabilization Project number 19-516 to, do I need to get the numbers here? To Lametti and Sons Incorporated of Hugo, Minnesota, in the amount of $329,400.
I'll second that.
A motion, we have a second. Is there any final discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And the motion carries. Which leads us to item number 10, informal status reports. Do we have anything for the viewing, listening audience?
Well, I want to thank everyone that did brave out into the cold weather on Saturday to Winterfest. I know the numbers were down, but there were a lot of kids I know inside having fun, and it seems like there were a lot of kids outside having fun too. Just, I think they said overall the numbers were, but I want to thank everyone that volunteered, that participated in that. Kids seem to be able to handle cold more than adults do, so.
It's a fun family event.
Yeah, it was fun, so.
Mr. Mayor, I thought I would note that for those of us that are sticking around and toughing it out this winter, here in February, we've got a lot of activities going on in Fridley. Here on the 7th, we have, a seminar,
Compassion Action.
Passion into Action, here at the City Hall. We've got dinners going at Springbrook Nature Center. I know I'm going to attend the electric vehicle dinner on the 9th. They may still have tickets if you're interested. Fridley Community Theater is playing for a couple weeks, dinner theater.
I think that's like the 8th and 9th, and then again on the 14th, 15th, and 16th.
Yeah, it runs, yep.
It's a Neil Simon play, Fools, I think, what I recall.
For
Dinner
Valentine's
served
Day.
and great entertainment.
Yeah.
We saw that we approved the license for the Lions to do their annual event at Minnesota Banquets in Minnesota.
February 22nd.
22nd, and then towards the end of the month, hopefully we can all support our efforts with the Police Explorer Dinner. They're doing their fundraiser. That's a Sunday, the 24th. I
And
know.
that will be like 4:30 to 7, $10 per person, and it's gonna be at the
Community Center.
community center, right?
Yeah, Sean Murphy has been real instrumental in driving that program. Anyway, lots of things to do.
And then on February 10th, there's Kids Family Art Sunday, where kids can actually make Valentines. So it's from 1 to 3, and that's a free activity at Banville Lock Center for the Arts.
So lots of activities for people to participate in, and forget about the cold weather. Most of these activities will be indoor. So put it on your calendar, check it out. If there's nothing further,
Yeah, if there's nothing further, I recommend everybody bundle up for the next couple of days, and if that, I move that we adjourn. I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, motion carries. Thank you for attending or watching your city council. Good evening.